Alright, I was looking at this code, trying to figure out what we're going to do next. And I think the best way to do this is we need to get uh, the data that we're drawing to the canvas. We need to get that data to an off-screen buffer, basically an off-screen bitmap. Because right now we are sampling from a place on the canvas and then writing to another place on the canvas, right? Um, and if we want tile map data, right, that data is never going to actually be stored on screen, right? It's going to be like stored in a texture in GPU memory somewhere, or in like an array, or just off-screen bitmap, something like that. Let's take a look at the screen. So my first thought here is we're going to comment out some code and just look at the results here. I've decided that this right here is viewport 0, and I forget which numbers these are. I'm going to look at my diagram really quick. Okay, so viewport 0 is right here, and then that big one is viewport 3. What we're going to do is, for now, until we refactor, we're just going to assume that viewport 0 is the viewport that's going to be on screen, and any of the other viewport numbers we're just going to use to sample data that is off screen. So viewports 1, 2, and 3 will be used to sample like tile map data. First thing I think I want to do here is just comment stuff out and see kind of the result. So we have our viewport fill test and all this viewport code here. I'm going to comment out these lines and observe the result on the screen. So let's look at the top here and see what we have. Okay, so now in our destination viewport, viewport 0, we see this kind of half and half color thing. And you might be wondering, where's that coming from? Because I just see diagonal lines. Well, it's coming from right about here, right? Because that's where the other viewport we were sampling from was positioned. Now, am I a fan of that? What viewport number is that? Looking at the diagram, that's viewport 2. Do we want to map from 2 to 0, or do we want to like stick with like 0 to 1? I kind of like sticking with viewport 1 to 0, and then if later we want to use other viewports for sampling other tile maps, we can do that. So looking at this diagram, viewport 0, I'd rather take from here and put it into here than take from this viewport. So let's go down and see where we're determining which viewport to sample from. And I see a little comment here, VP1, 2, and 3. And right now we're sampling from 2. I'm going to change that to 1. And after I've changed that to 1, if we go back up here and we refresh, okay, so we get this right here, which should be an area kind of like down here somewhere, right? Because that's where the viewport is. And that looks about correct. Do we want to... Yeah, okay, that looks about correct. I'm satisfied with the code. So let's keep on moving. So this do mapping here, it's going through what? It's going through the canvas adapter, and it's... Hold on, sorry. So the do mapping code that is sampling from one viewport and pasting to another, if we look down here, right, it's getting its data from the canvas, and then it's pasting data to the canvas. So this get command we want to get from something off screen. So we should try to make some type of off screen like tile map buffer or something like that. So let's go up here and let's just say function how do we want to do this? Actually, let's before we do that, let's make a var global data. We're going to start to try to centralize different data sets into some type of object. And we'll just call it global data, and then global data dot do we want to call it tile pixels, tile map, tile uint8 array, tile u8a. So I think I might call it that. So the actual data needs to be a uint8 array, or we could say map uint8 array. So let's say that the tile map is a uint8 array, so that's the data format. What do I want to call it? Or you could call it uint8 array map. So I have like tile maps, level maps, blah 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 maps. I feel like map, the word map coming first, that sounds more like a verb than a noun, right? Because map uint8 array versus uint8 array map. But on the other hand, if I put map first and then uint8 array, that's more of a general to specific thing. So it's a map. What kind of map is it? It's a level map. So what do I want to do there? So the verbiage, I'm not going to worry about too much, because if it's underscore, we know it's a noun because I use underscores for variables and then camel case for functions. So I think I'm going to call it map u8a for map uint8 array. So it's just this is basically just going to be a bitmap that is off screen, and the bitmap is stored as a whole bunch of 32-bit integers. Oh, sorry, did I say 32-bit? I mean, we're actually going to split each. So usually a pixel is like 32 bits, but we're going to split it into 4 packets, each of them being 8 bytes. So R, G, and B, those 4 components, each one of them being 8 bits, right? 8, 8, 16, then 24, then 32, making up a whole pixel. We're actually going to store all of those elements separately rather than packed into one 32-bit integer. So I'm sorry, I misspoke, misled you, I lied to you. I'm sorry. uint8 array, because if we look down in the source code, you can actually tell that the data of the canvas is likely a uint8 array. For example, these calculations here, you see that the red, green, blue, and alpha, they're each a byte, right? And 4 bytes makes 32 bits, right? So 4 bytes makes a 32-bit integer, or 4 bytes makes a pixel. I don't know how you want to think about it. This fact kind of has screwed me up before, because I forgot to account for the 4 components per pixel in the calculation. And that actually makes the XY to index formula a little bit more complicated, because you have to remember to put that multiplication by 4 into your formula. I should, I'm just going to make a little note here. I'm going to take this because I think that's good to have later in my notes. I'm going to go over to the right screen here. And I'm just going to say, let's see, it's XY to component index. XY to XY to first component of OpenGL texture data. I don't know. I'm just making a note here. Feel like I might want to come back to this Alright, so I gotta stop recording and start again.